Guys, it's happening. The M2 is no longer with us. Apple has recently suspended the production of M2 series chips, and despite this news being pretty dark, I think there is more to it than meets the eye. So let's take a closer look. Apple has recently published a financial report from which we found out how bad the situation with Macs really is. The numbers in the report show that Mac sales by the end of 2022 were down by over 28% from the 2021 levels. To our surprise, Macs are performing the worst in terms of sales, being outperformed by iPads, wearables, and services. And according to recent data from IDC, the Mac sales in the first quarter of 2023 fell by a whopping 40.5% compared with the same time the prior year. People have stopped buying Macs, and Apple has halted the production of chips because of that. According to the ELEC report, Apple's main chip manufacturer TSMC in January didn't send the typical amount of chips to OSAT or OSAT due to Apple's instructions. Production was halted until the end of February, but even after it began again, it was operating at only half of the capacity it did previously. Keep in mind, all of that is happening right when Apple announces their new M2 series MacBook Pros. So what really happened? The M2 chips happened. Oh, and how much disappointment is in that name. The M1 chip that came out in 2020 has turned into a legend and a menace. Cool, efficient, and super powerful. It gave a second life to a dying lineup of MacBook Airs and brought back speed into Apple's computers. But the M2, well, you know the story. Minor performance gains, increased power consumption, higher thermals, increased prices, and that whole SSD controversy. Apple has really messed up with their new chips, not living up to people's expectations. People were expecting to get the same thing, but better. And we got, well, you know what we got. Even the latest MacBook Pros with M2 Pro got worse than their M1 predecessors. In our testing, the M2 Pro machine in many tests was actually slower than the M1 Pro. But is that the only reason? Spoiler, it's not. Apple are not the only ones who saw the sharp decline in computer sales. All computer manufacturers are experiencing the same issue. Their sales declined by 34, 30, 24%, but no one had such a decline like Apple. This decline started as the pandemic started to slow down and people went back to their offices. The need for laptops and PCs fell rapidly, but why has Apple's sales suffered so much? Well, it again boils down to those chips. When the pandemic hit, Apple released the M1 chip. That was an instant hit. But now, the post-pandemic world doesn't need so many computers, and Apple's latest computers are not that good to be wildly desired. So yeah, the M2 chip is to blame. But what you can blame is the sponsor of today's video. It's the Honua one-piece gas spring monitor arm, and it's been a total game changer for me. Setting up was a breeze, seriously. No more messing around with tiny screws or complicated instructions, just a few simple steps, and I was good to go in less than 5 minutes. But here's the real magic. Adjusting my monitors has never been easier. I can now effortlessly set them at any height or any angle I want without needing any tools. It's like a dance, smooth and easy. No more straining my neck or back. My posture has improved and I feel way more comfortable during those long work hours. Plus, the sleek design of the monitor arm adds a modern touch to my office space, making it look even more professional and put together. I also appreciate the durability and stability of this monitor arm. It's built to last and can easily handle the weight of my monitors without any wobbling or sagging. It's clear that Honua has put a lot of thought into the quality and functionality of this product. Oh, and my desk? It's a whole new world of neatness and space now. This monitor arm has seriously decluttered my workspace and made it so much more organized. It's a real productivity booster, let me tell you. So if you're tired of the mess and discomfort of multiple monitors, you gotta check out the Honua monitor arm. It's easy to install, easy to adjust, and totally worth it. Upgrade your monitor setup with this bad boy and thank me later. Click the link down below to learn more, and now let's get back to it. The cross-industry sales drop is where it gets really interesting. This halted production and abysmally low sales paint a very interesting picture. I think there may be two possible explanations for what's really happening inside the company. First, the M3 chip is almost ready to be released. Second, the M2 chip may have some internal issues that need sorting. Let's look deeper. The M3 chip has been rumored to be ready for months now. We know for sure sure it will use the 3nm technology that will make it more powerful, more efficient, and much cooler. This technology was initially rumored to arrive in M2 chips, but it didn't. As for dates, according to the rumors, TSMC was planning to start production in the fourth quarter of 2022. And that was a few months ago, so this decline in chip production may really mean that at the upcoming WWDC we'll see M3 powered Macs. To some, that doesn't make any sense. Why release the M2 chip a year before the M3 and M2 Pro and M2 Max half a year before? Well, it may look illogical to you, but it's not the first time Apple did something like this. Remember the iPad 3? It came out in March of 2012, and only 8 months later, we got the much better iPad 4. Not convinced? The last Intel-based MacBook Air came out in March 18, 2020. And only 8 months later, on November 17, we got the M1 MacBook Air. Suddenly, it all starts making sense, right? These timelines perfectly line up with Mark Gurman's predictions of new Macs arriving between late spring and summer. According to Mark, we might receive the updated 13.6-inch MacBook Air and the all-new 15-inch MacBook Air, both featuring the M3 chip. We already know that Apple's supply chain started production of display panels for a new 15.5-inch MacBook Air in February. Also, shortly after the release of M2 Pro MacBooks, Meng Chi Kuo tweeted that the 14-inch and 16-inch MacBook Pro will also be updated with 3nm M3 Pro and M3 Max chips. He predicts 2024 to be the year of the update, and that makes sense. M2 Pro Max arrived in January, 7 months after the M2 MacBook Air. So if the MacBook Air will get M3 in, let's say, June, we could expect to see the M3 powered MacBook Pros by January 2024. Let's also not forget that Apple hasn't updated the iMac for a couple years now, and according to The Verge, the M3 powered iMac may arrive earlier in 2023. It may also be released alongside other products at WWDC 2023, which will be held on June 5th. As for the second possible scenario, I think this can be the case, however, the chances are really slim. Apple has always been very careful with its chips, and expecting them to allow the M2 chips to have serious flaws is almost impossible. Nevertheless, let's not ignore the fact that there is such a thing as cybersecurity. In 2020, Apple made internal changes to their A-series chips mid-cycle, updating the secure storage component. Also, in 2022, MIT researchers have found unpatchable flaws in M1 series chips, which could allow hackers to break the seemingly impenetrable security of Apple Macs. Just weeks after the news, we got the M2 MacBook Air, which doesn't have such issues. And a little bit later, we get the M2 Pro and M2 Max MacBook Pros. Seems almost like a coincidence, right? But I don't want to be the tinfoil hat man, so let's ditch that idea aside. So what should you do? Should you wait for the M3 to arrive, or should you go and buy a Mac right now? Yes, absolutely, but which one? Almost any Mac. There are so many great Macs on sale right now. Look, here is the M1 MacBook Air. Amazon sells it for $720 right now, and you can get it for $850 directly from Apple. You will get a very capable laptop in a modern design with a great screen, keyboard, and outstanding performance to price ratio. It will be perfect for college students or anyone who doesn't do heavy stuff on their computers. If you want something more modern, here's the M2 MacBook Air. It costs $1,050 on Amazon and $1,080 refurbished from Apple. This Mac will give you the latest design, premium display, great performance, but you will have to deal with a slower SSD. No? Then take a look at this 2021 16-inch MacBook Pro. Amazon sells it for $1,689, and that's a 1TB model. It also comes with a fully loaded M1 Pro chip, which makes it a fantastic deal. Pro motion display, pro performance, great battery life, and huge amount of headroom. Isn't that the perfect machine? If 16 inches is too much for you, here's the 14-inch model instead. On Amazon, it costs $1,393, and Apple sells it for $1,539. And as you know from our vids, that laptop will be better than the M2 MacBook Pro. So yeah, there are a lot of great options to consider. But if you already have an M-powered Mac, you may want to hang on to it a little longer, because if the rumors I mentioned are true, just a few months from now, we'll see a myriad of great Macs and MacBooks with M3 chips inside. More performance, better thermal thermals, and all that. Personally, I can't wait to see what Apple's got in store for us this year. As you see, the halt in chip production may not be as bad as people expect it to be. It may just be the pivotal moment for Apple from which everything will get even better. So let's keep our hopes up. Everything will turn out just fine.